Hello, my name is Daniel Villanueva, and I am the host for Owl Talk, a product of Rice University Digital Learning and Strategy. And today we have Google's head of North America Workspace for Education, Drew, to talk a little bit about AI in education and the future of our partnership. Thanks so much for joining us, Drew, and I appreciate your time.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited to have this discussion, and I always like to start out by getting to know the person we're speaking with before we get to the content, the meat of what Google is doing and how you're transforming education. So, Drew, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you came from, how you got to Google, in the quickest possible way for the audience to have some interest in Drew.
Okay, sounds good. My name is Drew Seidel. And today I live in Austin, Texas, originally from St. Louis, Missouri. I went to the University of Missouri, where I studied political science as well as psychology and Spanish. I actually had a really interesting route to Google, and this is actually pretty common at Google. A lot of folks have these paths where you gained experience, expertise, knowledge, you became more interesting, and then you found this kind of role at Google that was a good fit for that. And I'm definitely kind of in that mold. So coming out of college, I actually thought I was going to be a lawyer. I thought law school was in my future, but I wasn't totally ready to jump back into the library for another 3 years. So I ended up applying for a couple of programs and was lucky enough that I got the two that I most wanted. So my first year after college, I did a Fulbright fellowship in Madrid, Spain, where I was teaching in a dual language high school, as well as organizing some community service projects there. And then after that, I did the Teach for America program. And actually, through Teach for America, I lived on the Rice campus for a summer. This is where I did my summer institute, essentially boot camp, preparing me to go and be a teacher. And after my time at Rice, I went and taught dual language or bilingual elementary school in Fort Worth, Texas. So I did that for a couple of years. And then through Teach for America, I ended up being recruited to work for another company for about a year. And then early in 2014, the Google for Education team was growing. And through a recruiter and actually a friend I had at the time at Google, kind of my name came up as someone who had this kind of mix of education background, but as well business acumen. And I was lucky enough that kind of experience and that skill set was there, kind of right time and right role. And that was early 2014 and been on the Google for Education team ever since.
You've got a big title, right? Head of North America Workspace for Education. I mean, that sounds big. What do you do? What is a common day? What are your responsibilities? What does that mean? For those of us who are layman people, like we're this or that marketing or teaching, people can generally get what that is. I imagine you're this big researcher and you're making tough decisions and you're thinking about the future. But for those that are listening, what do you do? What is that job?
Yeah, great question. So in my role, I lead a team that has this really phenomenal and as well unique opportunity to be able to partner with, to learn from both K-12 and higher education institutions across the U.S. and Canada. So that's a little bit about scope and remit. And specifically, my team is focused on how we partner with these organizations to drive adoption, to drive meaningful usage and value with the Workspace for Education platform, that portfolio of tools, and now as well, much of what we're bringing to education as far as Gemini, NotebookLM. So it is very busy. There is a lot to do, and it's just an incredibly exciting time as, Google, we reoriented as a company to be AI first back in 2016. So we've been thinking about this moment for a long time, and now that AI is so top of mind across K-12 and higher education, it feels like a really momentous, but as well, a pretty serious moment in education, and the opportunity coming from, being an educator before my time at Google to this role, we take that really seriously. As far as the day, every day's a little different. Some days I'm on site doing things like this. Some days I'm more internally working, be that coaching someone on my team, be that hiring a new member of the team, or making decisions around where are we allocating our resources, what are the big opportunities, what are the challenges, and how we drive against those. But most of my favorite days are when I get to be spending time with, be it K-12 or higher education institutions, and seeing how they're using our tools, the impact that they're having, the challenges they're facing, how we can help those to address those as well. So days like today, really fill the cup.
So tell us a little bit about your Rice experience. You're coming back home. What did you do here at Rice during that experience? What did you take away about your time at Rice, and any kind of memories of the city of Houston when you were here?
Ooh, great question. My memories of Rice are so fond. Things that I remember, it felt in a lot of ways like you were going to school. They actually gave us lunch boxes that we would take when we went to teach at the summer school sites. You were living in the dorms, and this, for most folks, was their experience directly after college. So a really exciting time. You were meeting all of these new people. You were learning so much. I hadn't studied education, and in a pretty quick amount of time, they're preparing you to go and be a teacher where you're going to be placed ultimately. So I remember being really excited, meeting all these new people, but as well just learning so much in a pretty condensed period of time. And Rice campus, I remember being so impressed by it. I loved the dorm. We had a sand volleyball pit or court right next to the dorms. We'd play there every day, probably to blow off some stress. It was kind of a stressful environment at that time. And as far as things we did in Houston, I remember we went to an Astros game. A lot of fun. Took the rail around, went to Rice Village, and did spend a little bit of time at Valhalla as well. Had some 1 or 2 nights there. And I just made some fantastic friends. They're folks that to this day are some of my best friends. And I have, Teacher America and my time at Rice to thank for much of that. Because even some of the folks going to cores outside of Fort Worth, these were people that I spent time with here at Rice in Houston. And because of the experiences we had, those friendships that we formed there, we were able to remain friends even if we went to different placement cities. So yeah, very grateful to Rice. It was a wonderful experience.
Well, I'm glad, and I hope that's part of the reason why y'all selected Rice as part of this national tour and coming on campus because of the experience that you had and your role. But talk to us a little bit about exactly what this national tour is and why Rice. Is it because we submitted an application? Is it because I work here? Is it because you came? Why Rice?
Mostly you.
Yeah. Thank you. Let's play that again. Let's record that one more time.
So as far as the event, we are here on campus doing a number of activities, a number of activations, but the big, let's say, kind of driver here is we are trying to raise awareness and help folks to understand what the tools are that are now available to them as being part of this Rice community, and not just what the tools are, but what the benefits can be for them, how these tools can be used in their work, in their teaching, and their research, and their learning. And so we're doing that for students, for faculty and staff, as well as for the administrators and the leaders. And as far as why Rice, as part of this, there are only 11 schools, and that list may grow, but the initial list is relatively small. We were looking for institutions that had this foundation set with Google. Rice has been a long time Workspace for education organization using tools like Google Drive, Google Docs, and Rice, made the decision to make tools like Gemini for education as well as NotebookLM available across the community to students, to faculty and staff. And so we wanted to kind of reinvest in that way and kind of demonstrate that partnership that as you are making these tools available, we as well wanted to help support the initiative by helping show students, faculty, and staff what these tools are, the power of them, and what the possibilities are for them, and the impact they can have in the way that they work, the way that they teach, and the way that they learn. So it's been an awesome experience. It's exciting to see. There were lines of students waiting to get into some of the activations, and went to a really great faculty staff training on the tools today as well.
Yeah, it was a great training. I participated with some of the students, had some student testimony. They really enjoyed it. The faculty and staff as well. You and your team did a fantastic job. And on behalf of all the members here at Rice, we thank you for your time and commitment for that. Well, you talk about your responsibility for these tools, right? And the trainings that we had on campus for our faculty, staff, and students specifically focused on Gemini and NotebookLM. Can you tell us a little bit about each of those products and kind of what they do, why they were created, and how you see them integrating into beyond the Google ecosystem that you have set up today?
Ooh, yes. All right. So I'll start with kind of what the two tools are that we're focused on today. So first is Gemini for education. That is a version of Gemini. It's our large language model, as well as that kind of chat interface experience, but it is bespoke, specifically built for education. When we say Gemini for education, what we mean by that is we're creating an experience that has data protections, that has the security and compliance controls so that an organization like Rice can deploy that with confidence, knowing that training is not happening on that data, understanding that as administrators, they have control, they have insight. That is a thing we take very seriously. And we're very lucky as well that we had this foundation in how we are making tools through Workspace for Education, like Gmail, Docs, Drive, Classroom, how we were making those tools available. We could build on much of that learning as far as how we built Gemini for Education to create a really best-in-class AI tool, but as well make it bespoke, working for education. In addition to having the security, the compliance component, we kind of see that as table stakes. Like for Rice, that's going to be key before they determine, is this something we're going to deploy across faculty, staff, and students? We then think about, how do we make this work for an educator, for a student? So something that we have built in is called LearnLM. That's our education-specific family of models. And with that, we built that in partnership with a number of higher education institutions as well as K-12 to understand, how do we build a model with pedagogy? How do we build a model with learning outcomes in mind? So as opposed to just providing an answer, it's actually going to create a learning plan for a student to, get towards a specific outcome. So Gemini for Education, so exciting. And the possibilities with it are limitless, be that the way you're just engaging with this tool and kind of that chat experience. Something I absolutely love is something called Gems. That's the ability to create essentially a custom version of Gemini for your specific use case, for the specific outcome you want to drive, trained on the resources that you upload with your set of instructions. It is incredible to see how students, how educators are using this, as well as faculty and staff. So Gemini for Education is really exciting, and that is definitely a big piece of the puzzle when we think about bringing AI to education. We also have NotebookLM, and NotebookLM is one of the big ones. We've heard so much excitement from students, from faculty and staff today saying how they use it, they love it. It's an absolutely amazing tool. I see NotebookLM as an amazing platform for becoming an expert in almost anything. And the way I always talk about NotebookLM is, if you could attach something to an email, you could build a notebook in NotebookLM, be that copying and pasting a URL from a website, a YouTube video, uploading a doc or a slides presentation from your Drive, just copying and pasting text. If you can do any of those things, you put that into NotebookLM and it becomes an expert on your data. And so it's going to be trained specifically in the source content that you're uploading. And once that training happens, and that happens automatically in a few seconds, then you're able to engage with that source material in these really, I would say, mind-blowing, kind of awe-inspiring ways. Things like creating a podcast. So if we wanted to take the course book on organic chemistry, or if you wanted to take the unit plan and Psychology 101, you could put that in a NotebookLM, and in a couple of seconds, you could generate a podcast that is going to be an audio overview of what is this source material, explaining it to you. You even have the opportunity to call in. You can as well engage with that content with a few other exciting, kind of unique ways. You can create mind maps to show how content is interrelated. You can create FAQ docs, study guides. It's really exciting. So yeah, those are the two tools that we're primarily focused on here today. But there's so much that Google is doing with AI, and a lot we're doing with AI and Rice as well outside of that. But yeah, those are the two we're thinking about a lot.
So those two products are Google products, and I know on behalf of Rice, we've adopted them and are working with our faculty and staff to deploy them and their usage. But can you speak how maybe they may be adapted by the broader Google ecosystem, or any plans to roll those out to other applications or environments that might help students or faculty or staff?
Yeah, it's something we think a lot about. I think one of the big opportunities with something like this is, how do we make it work well for a student, for a faculty or staff member? And oftentimes that's going to be through things like integration. So something that we just recently launched is called Gemini LTI. That's using what's called learning tools interoperability. It's a set of APIs that's somewhat standardized across the ecosystem. And we use that so that we can embed tools like NotebookLM or Gemini, or coming soon Gems, directly into a learning management system like Canvas, as well as Schoology. So that can be a huge benefit. If you've got an instructor that's been teaching these courses, they already have that course content created. Now, just with the click of a button in that LMS interface, they can spin up a new notebook in NotebookLM to provide the students with that new kind of exciting way to engage in that course content. Similar, they could train Gemini to operate in a specific way, to be a specific type of teaching coach, a specific type of tutor. That's now embedded into the learning management system. So, I think that is one example, but there's so much more as far as the opportunity for integrations, partnerships. So that's something we think a lot about. But just across Google, it's really phenomenal at this point to see the velocity, the pace at which AI is essentially embedded into almost everything, be that how you're searching, what's happening in YouTube. When you see citations being generated automatically in a YouTube video, a podcast you're listening to, I mean, that is all AI in action. So yeah, the real world implications and already the benefits, it is really exciting.
It is. And you mentioned a little bit about this, the security and the data privacy. And I know that when I went to my first Gemini training on campus, it was held by the Transformational Technology and Innovation Center. And I was blown away by their approach to teaching as well as the product itself. And one of the things that they made very clear to us was that this data was security protected on Rice, and that we could upload sensitive material from Rice that included stuff that may have been protected for the university in here and still being compliant with FERPA and HIPAA and all of these things. And that was really kind of life-changing for me, because there's a space of you work on other AI models, and you have this concern about security. And now Google has introduced this workspace where on a work environment, I'm able to use the work content on a work product to deliver improvement on work, right? And so how important is it for security and data privacy in an educational setting? And, what specific steps have y'all taken beyond that to ensure that your product does meet those guidelines?
Well, we do take, I would say, just the responsibility of providing tools that are used by educators, used by students, faculty, and staff very seriously. And, I think if we don't have that foundation established of security, of compliance, of privacy, then it would be difficult, if not impossible, to deploy these tools and to make these tools available to be helpful for students, faculty, and staff across the globe. So if anything, we see it as, a non-negotiable. This is something we have to have in place before we can even go and bring these tools to, education institutions. So as far as the way we've done that, Google actually took a big stance. And I think looking across the ed tech ecosystem, something that's a big differentiator for Google is we approach this similar to how we had approached Workspace for Education, in a way that we wanted to make a set of best-in-class tools available, but in an equitable and an accessible way. And so Google took a big step in that direction by providing access to both Gemini for Education as well as NotebookLM. We've now made both those tools available as core services with data protections, with that security and compliance built in at no cost for any Workspace for Education organization globally. So that means if you are a K-12 or a higher education institution, and you want to provide your students with access to a really best-in-class set of AI tools with those data protections, with that security and compliance, you can now do so without having to go and buy a license for every one of your students, your faculty and staff, which we know for a lot of institutions, especially kind of what's happening with budgets, things of that nature, that could be cost prohibitive. So it is amazing to see that, for an institution like Rice, as y'all have been using Workspace for some time, as we did have that level of security and compliance, as we were able to show, covered by the same terms of service that are already in place with your other Workspace for Education tools, the ability now to make these tools available with just a couple of clicks in the admin console. It's really, an amazing thing. So responsibility we take very seriously. And we're very lucky that we have, a lot of smart people at Google building and ensuring that we have all of that security and all of that compliance. So we're in a good position.
So, one of the big discussion points for faculty and academia writ large, not necessarily exclusively at Rice, is, ethics with AI and how this is going to transform or perception that it may transform their work. And with society, there's this hesitation about AI. It's going to replace jobs. It's coming after you. These scary things, right? I, for one, am on the opposite side. Like, how can I integrate AI even more? That's just me and my philosophy, right? But in terms of the ethics of AI, can you talk a little bit about, specifically with the education realm of Google, how you're approaching ethics with AI for students and AI ethics with faculty and staff? And I know that in today's training, the staff that presented to the students did a wonderful job of really outlining when you should and shouldn't. And there's these case scenarios and going back and forth that I really thought was interesting. But beyond this and to the audience, what role does Google see their place in, and how are y'all ensuring that those conversations continue, so that we bring in those people in the academy and in the world who may have such hesitations about this new and innovative technology?
Yeah. Oh, a lot to unpack. I think some of it kind of gets back to the previous question around even things like security, compliance, guarantees around what we are versus are not doing with data. I think if you're a faculty member, if you're a student, if you're using these types of tools for school purposes, for work purposes, you want some level of guarantee that, training isn't happening on this data, that there's privacy and security. And so on the Google side, that is, I think, a big step that we take, is that if we're providing these tools through Workspace for Education as part of that core set of services, that we have that set of privacy, that we have that set of compliance in place. I would say as far as the ethical use within education of these AI tools, from the Google side, we want to make sure that we're providing a great set of tools that can be used safely, securely, in compliance. And I think it's, to a degree, up to each institution to determine, what are the policies that they want to have in place? How do they want to be guiding students kind of through this education journey with these new tools? We're already seeing examples of, I think, building on many of the experiences we had with bringing one-to-one computers into classrooms, bringing the internet into classrooms, or, even just the idea of me going into computer labs as an elementary schooler. There's always this idea of, we're providing access to a tool, and we should give you guidance. We should kind of help you to understand the power of these tools, the benefits, and when these tools shouldn't be used, when they should, and how they should be used for different purposes. And so although it's early, I think we're on a similar journey with these AI tools. I think there are already professors, faculty, and staff that are saying, for this course, if you're going and learning independently, if you're going and trying to drill into a concept, if you want to put together a learning plan to kind of better dig in and come prepared for that class discussion, the AI tools are appropriate for that. And then for other things like our exams, or creating work that is going to be yours authentically, that may be a place where AI tools shouldn't be used. And so although it's early, I think we have a lot of experience that we can look to as far as other education technology, how it's been brought into both classrooms, but at an organizational level, the policies needed to do that effectively. So we're already seeing, I think, across K-12 and higher ed, that's starting to take place. But as far as the Google side, I think we want to provide a great set of tools, a great set of security and compliance and administrative insight, but we want to really defer to the education organization. I think it would be very, almost inappropriate to a degree if I were to come to Rice and say, this is how you should use this tool, this is how you should not. We want to trust that, the administrators, the leaders at Rice University are the ones best equipped to make those decisions for your organization.
And how about these AI products and ensuring that they're accessible and beneficial to a global audience, to people outside the great state of Texas, to people outside the United States? How is Google ensuring that these really level the playing field and are accessible to other audiences?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things I'm most proud of working on the Google for Education team is similar to what we had done with Workspace. We did take that stance that across over 170 million students, educators, education leaders using Workspace for Education today, we were going to make these tools available with data protections at no cost. And what that means is whether you're a student at an institution like Rice University here in Houston, or whether you're a student in a small K-12 school in Africa, Latin America, you can access that same set of tools with that similar set of security, data, compliance. And it's something that, as we're providing it at no cost, it means that if you're a school leader and you're thinking, how could I provide these tools to my students if we're under-resourced, if we don't have the budget to go and provide licenses or buy licenses for each one of my students, faculty, and staff, there's now that opportunity to do so. I think it's something I'm really proud of and a big step that Google's taken in that way of making these tools available in an equitable way. So
you're part of a major company, right? I mean, Google is not just a little little company here. This is a major company, and I'm sure you see a lot and have good days and challenging days like most of the other people. I have nothing but great days, but most people, right? So talk about like the highlights of your work, something like that you're just most proud of relative to these products, like Google Gemini for education and Notebook LM. What's something that, just is so exciting in either the development, the launch today, that as Drew, you sit back and say, wow, I'm really proud of that?
Yeah. For me, the most, I'd say impacting things for me personally are going to be the stories that I'm hearing, be it a teacher, a faculty member within a higher education student, about the way they're using these tools and the way that changed, their work, their learning. There's a professor at a University of Maryland that was sharing, they taught chemistry, and so many of these concepts for years were just so difficult for students that, in some of these chemistry courses offered, there were pretty high attrition rates. And if a student wasn't able to pass that course, that could have long-term implications for that student's major, for the career they're ultimately pursuing. And, as they were building a notebook in Notebook LM and providing, a way for those students to engage with this course material in a new way, a way that felt exciting for students, and a way that those students maybe that couldn't previously grasp those concepts now could, that changed the game. They were seeing that students were not just engaging with this content, but they were better grasping these concepts and, maybe less likely to drop out of that course and more likely to pursue that career that they wanted to. It's stories like that. And on the K-12 side as well, hearing from educators that these things that took them so much time that felt more administrative, more burdensome, and took away from things that were more meaningful and more mission critical for them, like establishing those personal relationships with each student, understanding what helps to make those students tick and how they can better motivate that student to, participate in class, to go against their learning goals. We're hearing from K-12 educators that they felt burned out. They felt like they were maybe ready to leave that field. And with these tools, they are getting hours of time back, and they're able to not just get time back, but make the learning feel more personal for students, make the students feel more active as participants in their learning. It's those kind of stories that definitely, keep you coming back and keep you motivated. But I do feel very grateful as well. I get to work with an incredible team, such smart, motivated, kind, interesting people. And it's a great company.
So on the flip side, right, what are things that keep you up at night? And maybe it's not relative to the actual applications, right? But your work in general, be it that you're leading some huge initiatives. AI is on the forefront of our future. You're at a massive company with a great reputation. You're in the education space. What are things that keep you up at night? That may not be about your role necessarily, but you as an intuitive, intellectual person, what keeps you up at night? What do you think about that? You think, wow, these are going to be challenges that either I'm going to have to overcome in this work, or our team is, or the field is going to have to further develop to help solve ABC?
Great question. I would say prioritization. There is so much to do. The pace of innovation with these tools, and the pace at which and the volume at which institutions want to partner together. I mean, that's an incredible problem to have, but there's just so much to do. Every day for me personally, it's waking up and understanding, what are the big goals for today? What are the big goals for this week? How do those things kind of streamline into the big goals for my year, for the broader organization, for me personally? Prioritization, always a challenge. So that's something I'm just constantly thinking back to, as far as what are the North Star goals? What am I working to accomplish? And, every day what I'm doing across this day or this week, is that aligned? And am I making sure that that's happening across my entire team? That's definitely something. The other piece is, although it does feel iterative to a degree, new technologies are always developing and coming. AI does feel to a degree like a paradigm shift. And so I think there's a big responsibility of, are we getting this right as far as providing tools that are actually helpful, providing tools that are going to better equip students to learn. And, something I'd say for me personally that I think about a lot is just how do we continue to keep students challenged as far as their cognitive development? I think with these AI tools, there's so much potential to build and to create things quickly, whether it's a research paper or, a study guide. there's amazing potential with that, but there's also a potential, if these tools are being used maybe at times when they shouldn't or overly used, then maybe that student's not being cognitively challenged enough. And so that's something I just think about, as a former educator, how do we continue to ensure that students are being challenged every day so that they're developing those skill sets that, that even their brains are developing correctly. And that's something I think is in the hands of educators, is in the hands of institutions like Rice University to make those decisions. But, just for me personally, that's something I think about.
One of the number one questions that continues to come up when I interact with students, and I just adore my interaction with students. And so, their question is, well, I wanted to know how to get a job at Google. And although I can't answer that question because I don't work for Google, I would say to them, be born without quit in you. But if you can finish them and tell us, like, what skills and qualities, right, do college students today who are on a college campus who are looking to get into this education tech space, specifically Google or any kind of that, what skills and attributes are companies looking for like that, that they can begin now working on and leveraging so that they're competitive? So when the time comes for them to graduate and they play in a rock band and they decide to take a year absence and then go to college and then graduate, but then go into the workforce, like, how do they do that and what are y'all looking for? I know, there's no easy answer on how to get a job at Google, but specifically with the skills, the skill sets, and what would help them be competitive.
I think a lot about what are the kind of core pillars that an organization like Google or many other organizations are looking for in candidates. And, when I'm thinking about the hiring process and kind of the ideal candidate, I'm usually thinking about, let's call it 4 kind of key areas that I'm going to be assessing. The first is I'm going to be looking at role-related knowledge. Like, what has this person done before that is equipping them to kind of step into this role and be successful? It's not always apples to apples. It doesn't mean you've done this exact job before, but do you have a set of experiences and knowledge that you can come in and we expect, be successful in that role? So for a student looking at careers in, let's say, engineering or being an AI, scientist, so much they could do at a place like Rice University to kind of prepare to build that role-related knowledge, and going into the workforce, ways they can start to think about that also. The other thing that we think a lot about is leadership. Are we hiring folks that, even if they're not coming into a leadership role at Google, or even if they're not in a leadership role currently, are they leaders? Are they leading by example? Are they inspiring others? That's a major thing that we think about, because we recognize even if you don't lead a team, you have the ability to impact others. And, the work that you're doing, the way you're engaging with others, it's going to have an impact. And is that impact positive? And are you ultimately leading others and making them better and helping us all kind of progress towards our shared objectives, our mission? So that's a major thing we think a lot about. The other is, the way that you work. So at Google, we sometimes say Googliness, this idea of a person that is, creative, that is thoughtful, that's a problem solver. But a lot of that is, how you work with others. Like, are you collaborative? Are you someone who wants to recognize others? Are you someone that is going to, jump into a group project and be effective? And so, for students, whether it's that role-related knowledge, whether it's that leadership, or whether it's that way that you work with others, the way that you kind of bring yourself to work being thoughtful, collaborative, I think there are opportunities, likely many at Rice University today, that are going to help students to kind of craft that set of experiences, that set of expertise, that whether it's a job at Google or a job elsewhere, they're well prepared walking into that interview to be, a great candidate and a great fit.
So how about the future of AI, right? We think about all that you're working on, and you touched a little bit about all the things that you have to prioritize and how fast it's moving. And you can't give us any secrets unless you'd like to reveal anything. But what does the future of AI in education at Google look like? Can you give us any hints on possible new discoveries or what we have to look forward to, even if it's not the actual products? Is it that things will become more robust, right? Is it that there will be new things launching? Is it that we found a secret sauce that we're fighting with another company to like, what does the future of AI in education from Google's perspective look like? And anything that won't get you in trouble, won't get us in trouble, but that will leave our listeners intrigued about what's to come.
Well, the tools will continue to get better. We have a product roadmap that you can see 3 to 6 months to 12 months out what's coming. Just in the near future, the thing I'm probably most excited about on the roadmap is what's called GEMS sharing. So GEMS is that kind of custom version of Gemini that you can create to do something very specific. So it could be you give it this set of instructions to create the talk track for what your podcast is going to be that week, or what you're going to be teaching in your psychology or your accounting course. With that specific set of instructions, that specific set of training materials, have this custom version of Gemini that's there for you. Soon you'll be able to share that. So if you're an educator, you create that for your students. You create a learning coach for them with your specific course material, with your specific outcomes and instructions. The ability to share that with your students and share that through the learning management system with that LTI integration, phenomenal. But as well, just thinking about how teams work. So if you're an administrator, a school leader, you say, I want to build a tool that's going to be there to help a new member of my team or help any member of my team to do their day-to-day work more effectively. The ability to not just build those, but to share them with others, I think that is going to be a real game changer. But the thing I'm most excited about, and this is very much true with how we build tools at Google and Google for Education specifically, is much of kind of where we go and the tools that we build is determined by listening. It's going in, listening to that faculty member, to that student, to the CIO or that school leader about where do they want to go? What do they want these tools to do? As far as the current portfolio, what's working well and, where are the gaps? And so as far as where it's going next, a lot of that's going to just be determined by organizations like Rice, the organizations that we work with and partner with to understand where is, kind of their aspiration for how these things develop. And, it's going to be an exciting time listening and taking those learnings and putting them into action in our tools.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. You've done such a fantastic job and provided great insight into our questions for the viewers. Is there anything that you'd like to leave our audience with in terms of Google, AI, education, Drew, tennis, rock band, your life, anything, some lasting words about the future that you'd like to leave with our audience who are Rice University faculty, staff, and students?
Ooh. I feel like this is like Hot Ones, where it's like, what's the plug? Like, ate these wings, now you get this. Well, I just want to say a big thank you. I mean, the way that the Rice community has welcomed us today, the fact that faculty and staff were giving their time to attend a training, seeing the excitement from students, hearing their enthusiasm and the stories already about the tools that they're using and the impact those tools are having in the way that they work, the way that they learn. A big thank you. It's just a phenomenal opportunity and an incredible opportunity. And we really take that seriously. Like, there's a weight to that to ensure that we're doing these things the right way. So a big thank you. And I would say, come say hello. As far as if you are interested in Google for Education, interested in bringing these tools to your classroom, to your students, or to the way that you learn, there's so many resources online, so much available from Google for Education, training, certifications, and not just what these tools are, but how to use them in an education context, in a context of being a leader, being an administrator, being an educator. So, please come say hello, find those resources online, and a big thank you to Rice. It's been a phenomenal experience. We're happy
and as
to be
you
here.
mentioned in your priorities, prioritizing partnerships, we are the priority partnership for Google Rice University. We really enjoy all that y'all have done for us thus far, coming on campus, and I know there are a couple of other things in the pipeline that we're working together on that are really exciting and going to transform both of our work together. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, and you're welcome.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode. My name is Daniel Villanueva. This is Rice Digital Learning and Strategies podcast called I'll Talk. Thanks so much, and we hope you enjoyed the episode.